IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin, Doctor, your habit coach, and today we have another very special episode with Samir Patham. He is the owner of Adventure Pulse along with his business partner Sauraj, and we just did an episode 2 days ago where he was describing his journey to finally climbing Everest. And that is a beautiful episode where he takes you through the ups and downs, the heartbreaks of this journey towards climbing Everest. And he's a very, very close friend of mine. He's one of my best friends. And we've always had discussions about, what are the things that you learn from trekking? And while I love trekking, and you've heard me talk about trekking in so many episodes, is because there is just so much that you can learn from trekking that you can use in your everyday life to make you stronger, make you better. And ultimately, that is our goal. That is why you're here on the Habit Coach podcast. So without rambling any further, Sam, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast for the second time.
Thank you so very much, Ashdin. Such a pleasure sharing this platform with you on the Habit Coach.
The Habit Coach was born out of one of the treks that we did together, which was the trek to Ladakh, which was Tokangri. And the whole idea of habit coaching came from doing this trek with Adventure Pulse and his company. And we had finished climbing this amazingly high mountain. And Sam has this strange way of, making you feel scared and comfortable at the same time. We were standing in Leh, and he puts his arm around my shoulder. He points at the highest mountain in the range that is lining this beautiful landscape and says, Ash, you see that there? In 4 days, you'll be standing on top of that. And I will never forget that moment. I thought my entire world was crumbling around me. Instantly, I was thinking of what sort of excuses I'm going to give, saying that I am not going to do this. Oh, maybe my shoe is going to break, hopefully, and I'll not have to do that. Because it is the scariest thing, seeing that mountain ridge, which is basically like, drawing mountains as children draw mountains, like ulta V's, and the tallest point on that. So, Sam, you have this beautiful way of scaring me and making me feel comfortable at the same time.
Well, if it's any consolation, I am been accused of doing that for everyone.
So, Sam, you shared a fantastic article with me which triggered this idea for this podcast, which was saying that there are so many things that we learn from our trekking experience that we can bring to our lives, and things that we can learn from what we are doing right now, especially in this whole COVID situation. So, what are the important learnings that you have from your trekking experience, from climbing Mount Everest, so that we can use now?
Ashdin, I think a lot of these aspects you've kind of touched upon during the several sessions that you've had with many people. And, I'm of course, I think we belong to a mutual admiration club. So I am an ardent follower of not just your podcast, but also your posts on Instagram. And the fact is this, that I think I wrote that article honestly after one of the discussions I saw you were having. And it stems literally from the fact that during this point in time, people are dealing with a lot of frustrations, a lot of anxiety, a lot of sleepless nights. And very often, they're not able to understand where all this trauma is coming from. And I think to a very large extent, people kind of belittle it, saying that, oh, you don't know what it's like in the mountains, or you don't know what it's like standing at, or facing a war, or what a real trauma is like. But for those people going through this experience, I mean, for them, it's equivalent to their biggest trauma that they've faced in their life.
Correct.
And I think from that perspective, it's important to be able to not just sympathize, but also to empathize with what people are going through on a daily basis. And there are days where I wake up in the morning as well, where I feel lethargic, feel bored, feel that lack of inspiration to get up and do stuff. And that's normal, and that's okay. And that's what I think we all are facing during this period of time.
So one of the first things is to be comfortable and to show some compassion to yourself, saying that understand that this is a difficult situation. It is not about being unrealistic or just wearing rose-tinted glasses, saying that everything is fine. Things aren't fine, and making peace with that fact and being compassionate about how you're feeling is probably step one. Did I get that
True.
right?
Yeah, I mean, true. I mean, let's look at the scenario. Let's say that here you are, you go to office on a regular basis. In the evening, you meet up with a couple of friends. You go to a pub. You're used to socializing at least once, twice, if not three times in a week.
Hmm.
Now, for the last 4 months, all that has come to a standstill. I mean, we don't even know whether we'll be able to go back and enjoy a nice draft beer in a pub or enjoy a fantastic sushi meal in a restaurant.
Hmm.
And that is, to be stuck at home is possibly a fundamental change in your core personality,
Hmm.
which people are trying to deal with. Now, in the mountains, we're constantly dealing with a radically changing environment. I mean,
Hmm.
every 100 meters you go higher up the mountain, the air is changing, it's getting thinner. You're finding it difficult to breathe. The sun may be bright and shiny one day, and literally in a couple of hours, there can be a snowstorm. Uh, you're constantly trying to figure out how to change to this environment, and that's something that we've trained ourselves to deal with. And you kind of accept that change is going to take place and not really dwell on it, and that becomes a major challenge that people are facing right now. You're trying to fight the
Hmm.
change and not really accept it. And I think for a lot of people that kind of results in a huge amount of frustration.
That is such a superb point, that you are constantly trying to fight the change which is out of your control. It's like I remember when we were climbing Stokangri, the first day at Stokangri base camp was we reached there, we set up our tents, and it was the most beautiful afternoon that I've spent. It was almost like sitting on a park in London. I took out my book, I read my book at that point of time. It was brilliant. The next morning, we woke up with almost a foot of snow everywhere. Like throughout the night, it had just snowed. This this
True.
this this landscape that was brown now was suddenly white over just one night.
True.
And that suddenly puts thoughts in your mouth, in your mind, saying that, do you think I'll be able to climb? Will this be a successful expedition? Oh no, we might not be able to go back. We might have to go back. And those kind of thoughts suddenly start playing in your mind. And I
True.
remember you were just so calm. You, Sauraj, were like, yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. It'll go away. And we're like, but can't you see how much snow is there? How will this snow ever go away? And it's moments like that that teach you about just being in the present moment and understanding, saying that is there anything you can do about the snow? Are you going to go about digging the snow away? There's nothing you can do. So just have
Sure.
your coffee, sit, talk to everyone, because everyone's feeling that same amount of panic.
Correct. I remember listening to one of your podcasts where you were talking about, pessimists versus optimists with respect to their goals. And
Correct.
I think one very large extent of frustration that people are feeling right now, even the optimists are like, हाँ ठीक है, सब कुछ, everything will be back to normal by
Hmm.
July, August. Now, here we are in the end
In
of
July.
July,
Hmm.
and the number of cases are increasing. The only solution is, okay, let's go back into a lockdown.
Hmm.
We don't know what to do when the end of this is going to come. And that time based dependency as far as the goal is concerned can actually be quite scary. I mean, in the mountains, very often we budget for multiple days as far as bad weather is concerned. And
Correct.
very often we have people who come with us for a trek saying that, okay, can I do Everest base camp in 10 days and come back? And we're like, no, we need to budget for at least 2, 3 days of bad weather. We have to keep a contingency in plan.
Hmm.
And that becomes a huge lesson that you can't control the weather, you can't control nature and its elements. You have to be open and accepting to the fact that there are things that you can control and the things you can't, and you have to have the wisdom to know the difference. And I
Hmm.
think that is one of the biggest lessons that you do learn when you're in the mountains.
Yeah. And suddenly there'll be days when you can't do anything, where you're stuck in the same place, and you don't have to then think about the time that is going past. You don't have to think about when you'll do it. It's just that what you're doing is what you have to focus on. Where is your goal? And the idea is that you're going to reach there. Whether it happens today or it happens tomorrow, that's irrelevant. Where your goal is, that is something that you have to keep in mind. And in the mountains, these kind of things are so scary. So just like I was telling you in the beginning of this podcast about how Sam pointed at that mountain and said, Ashdin, you're going to be on top of that in 4 days. He did the same thing to me on our first trek, which was at Everest Base Camp. Now, we probably started our trek at about 8 o'clock in the morning, or maybe earlier, 7, and it was around lunchtime. It was 12:31. I'm tired. Remember, this is the first time I've ever done a trek, so this is all new to me, right? I've never walked that much in my life. I'm tired. I'm frustrated. This air is becoming a pain. Too heavy to breathe. And then Sam walks up, all jolly, and puts his arm around my shoulder and says, "Ashdin, do you see that roof?" And he's pointing 4 mountains away. Okay, like 4 hills away. You see that roof? That is lunch. And the number of swear words that went through my mind at that point of time, right? It was just like, what is wrong with you? Who thought that could be lunch? Don't you know how hard it is that walking this much? Don't you know how tired it is? And being a city kid, you never see distance like that and say it is possible to ever reach there. So you just, at that moment is when you dig deep, say, all right, I'm just going to focus on this next step. I'm going to focus on this next step. I'm going to focus on this next step. And you do a step by step by step by step. And sure enough, within a couple of hours, you're there. And that is, the magic for me about trekking. Sam, this is one of my biggest lessons that I learned from the Everest Base Camp trek.
Yeah, one step at a time, right?
Just one step at a time. And as long as you're moving forward, what do you need to worry about, right? What do they say in Nepal? Bistari, bistari, which is slowly, slowly. Bistari, bistari, and slowly, slowly. So anytime you feel like you're rushing, one of the Sherpas will come up to you and say, bistari, bistari, slowly, slowly. And that just puts everything into perspective, life into perspective, saying that you know where you're going. Is rushing going to make any difference? No, take it slow, take it slow, take it slow.
It's funny, because depending upon which part of the world is, usually they have very similar words. In Punjab, of course, the word is hole hole, just slowly, slowly.
Hole hole.
In the Sherpa language, the word is kole kole.
Kole kole.
It's called kole kole with a K.
Uh-huh.
And if you remember when we were climbing in Kilimanjaro, all the boys over there used to keep going, pole, pole, my brother, pole, pole.
Pole, pole. Right? All about trekking is slowly, slowly. And you eventually get to your destination. If you hurry, you don't get to your destination. So It is the slowly, slowly that makes a difference.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest challenges that people are facing, which they're not cognizant of right now, and this is something that I've seen with family, with friends, is that with the number of cases increasing around you, where earlier it was just a statistic, now there's someone who's not well, there's a society that you're living in where there's somebody who's fallen sick. The threat of picking up the COVID-19 infection is now becoming more and more real. It's not just about falling sick. Someone who's possibly fallen sick and has died. There's a certain sense of vulnerability that you have right now that you don't know. You can do everything right, and still a random chance encounter may result in you being infected. And I think that has, to a very large extent, created this sense of fear about, the possibility of how vulnerable you are, how exposed you are, and dare I say it, even the fear of possibly death. And I think that constant state has kind of resulted in tremendous amount of psychological challenges that people are facing. Of course, I'm not a psychologist, but you do hear people saying that they are not able to sleep through an entire night. They're not able to focus. You have apps today that you can check the number of cases around you and how it's increasing. where earlier you had one case in a 1 kilometer radius, now you have 20 cases in a 500-meter radius. There are people who are obsessed about the news about how the number of cases are increasing. um, this fear is something that I think people refer to as mortality salience. And this is something that we have learned to understand and accept in the mountains. Now, you yourself know, remember when we were climbing Stock Kangri, on the
Hmm.
shoulder, you're walking this really narrow ridge, and there's literally 1,000-foot drop on either side of the mountain. And you're literally 200 meters from the peak. Now,
Hmm.
knowing that you have to reach your peak is what your perspective is, but also knowing that there's a drop on either side of you makes you actually more conscious of every single step you take. So though there's this heightened state of anxiety that you're experiencing, there's also a heightened state of awareness of living in that moment. And that's something that you deal with very often in the mountains. I mean, whether it's crossing a crevasse, hanging off a rope, on a vertical ice wall, or even standing on the top of the mountain. This sometimes can literally make you extremely aware of what is happening and can actually be used to channelize in a positive direction. And this
Hmm.
is something that we've had to learn to deal with in the mountains, not just as a professional climber, but even when you're doing treks and climbs on a normal basis.
Wow. So this idea that death could be one step away, and making can do two things. One is you have to first get comfortable with that idea, and the second thing is you have to realize that can you channel it into something that can help you focus on where you need to go. And sometimes when I think about it, you're at Camp 4, you're sleeping in this tent way up high, just about to go climb Everest, and you're so exposed out there. You could die within a fraction of a second if something happened to the ice underneath you. How do you make peace with that fact that you are so vulnerable on an edge in the complete open?
I think, Ashton, it's more about focusing on your goal and not focusing on the fear. I mean, you've seen it yourself. I remember when we were descending down from Uhuru Peak on the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. And if you remember, there was so much of scree, your knee was buckling also, and you were facing a really tough time.
Hmm.
But you were not thinking about, oh God, I need to sit down and call a helicopter and get me out of here. Your focus was, okay, let me get off this mountain. And though every step was excruciating and agonizing, you were not focusing on the pain or the fear of the moment. You were using that pain and that awareness of every step and channelizing that towards that focus and goal of yours to, okay, I need to get off this mountain safely and soundly. And I think that becomes a huge thing. You're changing your perception shift from the fear and the dangers around you and using that heightened state of awareness towards the goal that you're trying to focus on.
Very interesting. Another way of thinking about it is you're focusing only on the things that you can control in that moment, right? You're not trying to think about what the stuff that you cannot control is, because that what if situation can drive you bananas. All the uncertainties that exist around you can drive you completely bananas. What if that boulder up there suddenly comes rolling down at me? What if my backpack suddenly has a tear? What if my shoe suddenly breaks? Because I know the kind of person that I am, which is so focused on making sure everything is perfect in the context of safety and all of that. It would drive me mad in the beginning till I said that have I done everything? I've done everything. Chalo, now we have to enjoy this journey.
True, absolutely. I mean, and that makes a huge difference. And that's something that people are dealing with on a daily basis. They're dealing with an increasing rate of infection. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, what is happening is that is becoming the focus. So, focusing on the other aspects of their life, the stuff that drives them, that is
yeah,
kind of losing perspective along the way. And, I'll just give you the example of Stokangri again, because everything said and done, that ridge is a very, very narrow ridge, and
hmm,
a single misstep can cause you to fall on either side, and you have experienced that firsthand.
hmm,
But you're not you're not fretting about that one step that could cause a fall.
Hmm.
You're thinking about that single step that will get you one step closer towards reaching the summit.
Hmm. Correct. And the last 10 meters of that summit will still take you half an hour to do because you're like so
True.
far away and you're so tired and you're just taking that one step. And
True, true,
like
true.
in an immediate understanding, you can think about it like people write in saying that I'm staying with a roommate who has no care about this whole coronavirus. They're going out, they're meeting people, they're inviting people home, and I'm just feeling stuck because I have to be in my room. I don't know what to do. And that again is focusing on something that you can't control
True,
instead of focusing on all the aspects that you could possibly do to try and control it from your side.
true, true. And
So many learnings from trekking. Wow.
and it's interesting because I've had a chance to obviously hear about a lot of the experiences of people that are talking to you both on the habit coach and on Instagram as well. And
Correct.
during this period of time in the last 3 months 4 months where we've been in lockdown, where some people have only been worried about them possibly picking up infections, there are other people who've redefined their life, either gotten fitter, have
Mm.
learned how to play the ukulele,
Mm.
have sat down and learned a new skill, have done a project at home in terms of a DIY project. There's so much stuff that people have been able to accomplish during these last 3 or 4 months.
Correct. And it all started with that mindset, right? Can I do anything? Can't do anything? Chalo, let's make the best of it. What are the things that we can do
True,
and control?
true,
And
true.
and that's the way to go about it. Fantastic. What else did you learn on your way up Everest that people can think about?
I think I've briefly spoken about this during our last interaction as well. That it's so important to build a team around you. This is your core team, and they have to be as invested in your goal as you are. Because there are moments when your passion, or as you call it, the motivation kind of falls and fades away.
Mm.
But if they believe in it as much as you do, then they're the people who are standing around you who will help pick you up when you've fallen, who give
Mm.
you encouragement, who say that, no, no, that's okay, don't worry about it. You can do it. And that makes a huge difference. And very often you think, okay, no, no, I can do this alone and I must do it alone and stuff like that. Because the number of naysayers and the number of people around you who will keep pulling you down are tremendous. I mean, you just need to switch on the TV and you have the doomsday prophecies who are talking about the end of the world. But
Correct.
the moment you have this core team, right, they're the ones who will constantly keep encouraging you when there's so many other noises of discouragement around you. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. It's one way of thinking. In fact, a lot of people have wrote in saying that I'm for the first time reassessing all my friends. Like I couldn't believe that they were my friends because now we're actually taken a break from all the busyness we did with friends, which was like going out, dinners, party, this, that. You're saying that right now in these 4 months, who's been there for me? Who's made me feel good? Who's made me feel bad? And creating the core team, just like you said, is so critical. Like you and Sauraj, y'all own this company. Y'all are the best of friends. Y'all are practically married to each other, right? It's like it is insane just how close y'all are, and because of this, y'all are each other's support system. Y'all can look at each other and know exactly what the other person's thinking. And creating this kind of support system, these kind of friendships, is super, super, super important. And this is the best time to start reassessing it.
I mean, we do this on a daily basis also. You have a gym buddy that you go to the gym with, or a running buddy,
Mm.
for instance. I mean, you yourself have created a support system for people who want to do the no sugar challenge. I mean, there's no
Correct.
reason for you to take on that initiative, but you're doing it, you're helping people because you've been through that journey and you yourself have seen how much of a difference it makes when you have built a support system around you. And
Correct.
I think that plays a huge role in the entire process of trying to work towards your goal.
Superb. Another thing that you had mentioned, I think, in the article was resource planning, right? And thinking about that during this time. When you're climbing a mountain, you have to carry everything along with you. So, you're very, very aware of all the stuff that you have. And I think one of the big learnings that has come out from this whole COVID situation is just that why do we have so much stuff? And, resource planning, finding out what is essential. How does that work on a trek? I've never planned a trek with you, so I never thought about it. But how does that work on a trek and how does that apply in our lives?
So honestly, that is become so part of our trekking experience that sometimes it becomes difficult when we come back home. The beauty and the simplicity of a trek is that for those 5 days, 10 days, 14 days, in our case, when we were climbing Everest, 2 months, all your possessions literally are in a rucksack on the back of your bag. uh, you have everything with you. You don't really need anything else, and your entire life can be compiled and constrained towards that. Now suddenly we finish a trek and you come back home, and then you have so many things that you have to worry about. In fact, I constantly keep losing my wallet or my keys in the entire house because I don't know where I've kept it. uh, During the course of a trek, I think you don't have a choice. You have to really dig down and assess what is critically important to you and what is not. And there have been times when we've had people who've come trekking with us who have brought big speakers and their laptops and a lot of other paraphernalia, and
Mm,
slowly and steadily, as the trek progresses, all that stuff kind of goes towards a common kit bag where they don't have to carry it, because you're doing an assessment as to what is critically important, what do you need, and what you don't need.
mm,
And I think that practice is something that a lot of friends do on a daily basis, even at home, where if there's stuff that they haven't used in the last 4 to 6 months, chuck it out, get rid of it.
mm.
Simplify life. Why complicate it and clutter up your life? And I think that's a brilliant practice, and that's something that I think intrinsically you learn when you're trekking in the mountains, and it's a good practice to have.
Absolutely. I love it. Simplify life, see what are the essential things that you need, and don't go overboard in just trying to hoard because, you know, we all have to carry all these things that we have with us through our own metaphorical, like, trek that we are doing through life. And the more stuff we have, the more is that weighing us down. So leave as much as you can on the side of the road, whether it's your stress, whether it's your physical, material things, and plan your resources properly, plan your energy properly, plan how you're going to go through that step properly.
Yeah.
Love it.
For me, the biggest learning uh, from Everest and from my experiences in the mountains has been being able to ask for help. And I think that's a really, really uh, big lesson that I can take away from not just Everest, but from every other aspect and walk of life. It's so often that we feel that, okay, no, I don't want to ask for help. Whether it's your ego that gets in the way, whether it's the fear of being perceived as a failure, but every endeavor that you do in the mountains, you usually are a team. Now, whether it's question of pitching your tent, organizing your food, building up the training to get the technical experience to get there, or even trying to figure out the finances as to how to climb Everest, we had so much help. And it all made such a huge difference. And I think even now, during this period of time, it's so important to be able to just reach out to somebody and say, listen, I need help, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, and even financially. um, Being afraid to do that sometimes can have so many more negative connotations than anything else.
Correct. Having the ability to ask for help, allowing yourself to ask for help is important. I remember there are people who go on treks and you're at this high altitude, your breathing is heavy, your head is heavy, you're feeling sick, but you feel that because you are King Kong, you should not ask for help. right? You should not say that, I'm feeling like this. What will people think? They'll think I'm weak. I should not ask for help. And that is the worst thing you can do, because you're just aggravating your situation. You're making it worse. And nobody then knows if you're going through this or not. And one of the things that you and Sauraj and your team do very well is read people's faces and say, all right, this person not feeling well. I need to spend time with him.
I mean, very often when you have, especially when you have a team of guys, it's quite hilarious because a team of guys, the testosterone is raging. It's a physical endeavor. So these guys are competing with each other. And then obviously the mountains are brilliant leveler because after a period of time, you can't run up the mountain. The slower you are, the better you are. You've seen that firsthand.
Yeah.
And you see this guy and he's struggling and he's close to tears and you're like, dude, are you okay? Do you need some help? No, I'm fine. I'm okay.
You just like grit your teeth and keep going. Don't ask for help at all.
Yeah, no, but it's important because sometimes, the old adage is stitch in time saves nine. If you ask for
Yeah,
help at a particular point in time, then you can really prevent an uncomfortable situation becoming bad and sometimes even becoming worse. And
correct.
that's something that's applicable even in everyday life. I mean, especially now, especially when
Mhm.
you're stuck at home, especially when you're struggling with how to deal with situations. And it's fantastic because very often I've seen so many friends just put out a simple post saying that, if you've ever worked together, if you need someone to just talk to, you need somebody to reach out to, I'm going to be there. And I think that's fantastic.
Beautiful.
That's really, really incredible.
And so needed at this point of time.
True.
Superb. All right, Sam, we're coming towards the end of this episode. So, to quickly recap, the important things that we've covered are: first is understand to take things slow, right? You have to keep your eye on where you're going, and then not necessarily hurry up, take it slow, give time, and let it happen peacefully. The
True,
second one,
absolutely.
right, which was this whole idea of the fear of death, and living in a state of fear because what you are going through is currently dangerous. And where
True.
the habit that we were talking about is, instead of focusing on the danger, focus on what is it that you have to do now in this particular moment, and that's it. Know where you're going, but focus on what you can do right now instead of focusing on all the what if this happened, what if this happened, what if this happened in the situation.
True,
The third thing,
absolutely.
understand your resources, right? Why do you need so much stuff? Why do you need so much baggage? Both in the sense of mental baggage, physical baggage in terms of things, or stress. Leave it on the side of the road, continue going down peacefully. The fourth
True.
thing was ask for help, right? If you're in a situation and you feel you need help, please ask for help. And finally, Sam, is there a last fifth thing that you have in mind that people can take away from trekking and use in their everyday life?
I think I mentioned this before. I don't think can stress on how important this is. Just build a core team around you, people who completely believe and champion your goals as much as you do. Trust me, that makes such a huge difference. I mean, people focus on Michael Schumacher winning the Formula One in a Ferrari car, not
Hmm,
realizing that there's a huge team of engineers behind him who are making that car the fastest in the world. I
correct.
think that makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. These five learnings from trekking into the situation that we're going through right now, into COVID, into our lives, is absolutely beautiful. Sam, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. Where can people reach out to you, and what should people reach out to you for?
Thank you so very much, Ashton, for having me. I know we've been talking about this for so many years, and I'm just so glad to see this happen. I've been able to see a habit coach evolve from an idea to a concept to existence and now become such a fantastic success. Uh, you can reach out to us on any one of the social media platforms. Just look for Adventure Pulse. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. Our website is adventure-pulse.com. and reach out to us for anything. If it's a small little trek, if it's guidance on how to start this incredible experience of trekking to even transitioning into climbing peaks, we're here to facilitate your next big adventure.
Absolutely. I think, Sam does a fantastic job of working with people who've never trekked before, to making them feel comfortable, to making them go through these treks. And right now, I know everybody's having cabin fever, stuck at home. Start planning your next trek. Reach out to them saying that, Baba, enough is enough of the city life. I now want to go into nature and I want to forget everything that has been happening. Tell me where is the best place for me to start. And I think that is a great way to reach out to Samir and his team. Thank you, Sam, for being part of the Habit Coach podcast. It was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ash.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome 180.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. Some really fun guests on the network this week. Cyrus welcomed Dia Mirza to come and have a conversation about all kinds of different things. Danny Morrison was on Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast. If you haven't heard that, that's always a fun listen. And Raul Subramanian was on Football Should Fall to grow their ever more exciting list of guests. And it's not just that. Mantra Mugdha, the old friend of ours, was on Advertising is Dead. Manu Pillai was on the Filter Coffee podcast. It's been one great guest after the other. And with that, we hope to catch you again next week.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.